So just to introduce everybody, Nursel is one of the co-founders of Kalama Park. We started that in 2006, a very long time ago, and she's living in London. And Alison is in California, right?
Yes, indeed, California.
And you are a specialist for extraordinary travel marketing experience.
Yes. I come from a travel industry background, but also marine biology as well in the early days. And now I have a business called Blue Yugen, and I work on consulting projects and various other things in the world of space, private jet travel, travel industry at large, and a few other interesting projects. So that's me.
Perfect. Ellen is specialist for oil spill elimination, right?
Well, that was one of my major careers along the way, yes.
Okay. And he was in Hydrolab for interesting mission, and we had a very funny and very nice chat over that. I said we have to share it with the others, so I'm still very happy that Alison introduced us to each other. So Brendon is the founder of Atlantis Sea Colony.
You got it right this time.
This right. Every time I have Atlantis under colonies, is it plural or I'm so mixed up. And he stayed in Jules Undersea Lodge last month, I think.
Yeah.
Or 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Something like that.
So yeah, and I'm the founder of Kalama Park. Everybody knows anyway, I think. So yeah, what I wanted to talk to you today is first of all your experiences from the other habitats that especially Hydrolab. Hydrolab is history already, and I'm very curious about I mean how it feels to be in those habitats, especially like Hydrolab. As I said, it was one of the first big experiments. And I think Hydrolab also had a complete air hatch on it, so you could reduce the pressure to 1 bar, I think even. I'm not sure. Maybe I mix it with Marine Lab, but I'm not sure about that. Yeah, maybe I mean because it's just very fresh. Maybe Brendon can say something about Jules Undersea Lodge. How was it? I mean, when you got in there, you stayed the whole night in there.
Yeah, so I was there for 24 hours. I had been there a year before, but didn't get to stay the whole time. So there wasn't that much of a shock. I knew what I was getting into, type of thing. It's definitely dated, since it's La Chalupa from back in the 60s and then retrofitted to be Jules back in the 80s. They've done a lot of work to make it as friendly to visitors as possible, but you can definitely still see it was designed for scientific research and not for the everyday person. That being said, a lot of the amenities, they had good air conditioning. It's very cold in there. The beds were very good. They had a bathroom inside of it, which wasn't there originally, which was a big deal. Microwaves, refrigerators, Wi-Fi. So, I mean, they've done as much as they can with a 50-year-old piece of machinery as they can to make it welcoming to modern day people. But you had to want to be there to enjoy it because there's some aspects about getting in and out of the rooms, which is difficult, and just other little aspects like that.
Just one more time. It's 50 years old. It was La Chalupa before. And now
La Chalupa.
They turned it several years ago to the first underwater hotel in the world.
Correct.
And it consists of 2 tubes. They are connected by a room in the middle. So you get into the habitat in between these tubes. In the middle, there's some kind of a wet room, and from that room you can get to the one tube or to the other. In one two. I don't know exactly what is inside in the tubes, but I think one of them is, no, there are two different complete habitats, I think. And we were
Correct.
sleeping, isn't it?
Yeah, so each of them are about 10 meters long, each tube. So they're pretty long. So they're about the size of a 40-foot shipping container, more or less, as far as dimensions go. On one side is the living room and kitchen, and there's only one access to it. And then on the other side are two bedroom areas with two bunks in each bedroom, and there's access to that. So you've got a lot of, and there's windows on both sides of the bedrooms and one window in the living area. So there's a lot of viewing area as well. The moon pool area, the wet room, was very noisy and very low. You had to bend over to walk in there for most of it. But the rest of the area, it was, I think, around 2 meters tall inside. So it was spacious.
And Brendon, can I ask, was the purpose of your experience down there more or less like a site inspection? So to get an idea of how it's operated, better understand the product and the experience.
So when I was there a year ago, I got a full walkthrough of the grounds. They showed me the compressors and the redundancies and stuff along those lines. So I'd already seen that. So this time it was more of a, what have they done? What needs to be done to make it better? If we're redoing the whole thing, what would we do differently type of thing as well. So it was more of a site inspection. Also, I wanted the badge of an aquanaut. So, I did that obviously. So it was selfish as well, but yes, it was mostly site inspection.
Gotcha. And can you, sorry, I just have so many questions.
Yeah.
What can you convey what that experience was? I mean, I understand you were there for an site inspection, but if people are paying money from a tourist, standpoint, what is that experience? And what, if you could speak to more.
Sure. So, there's it's getting more and more notoriety. I've seen several YouTubers going there recently, so it's starting to get more and more notoriety. That being said, it's in a lagoon, so the visibility is not the best. I think that for what it is, you're getting your money's worth. It's probably a little underpriced, honestly, still. I'll tell you, for the Aquanaut package, which is a full 24 hours there, it's around $1,200. And that's on the website. You can see all that stuff. But you can stay there for just an evening for supper, or you can spend the night for different price points too. So you can stay there relatively cheap.
$1,200 is not per person, but it's for, or is it per person?
It's per person.
Okay. Right.
So the more people you get, the more of a discount you get as well. So if you get more people in there, it'll come down in price. Not drastically, but it will. So, but the experience is that it's one of a type of experience where you come up out of the water into a dry area. I expected it to be the noise level or the smell level, and there wasn't any of that. Once you got into either the living room or the dining room area or the bedroom area, there was very little noise pollution. They had done a very good job of sealing that off from the moon pool area, where there's constant water suction and you can hear stuff going on out there. So and there's high humidity in that area as well. So, as long as you're in one of the two main living areas, it's great. We sat there, we watched the movie. I was with another guy. We sat there and we watched the movie. We ate pizza. We hung out. Yeah. We played on our phones on the internet and made some videos. And then,
this is not fair, Brendon. You're making it sound like an exotic hotel.
I mean, I'm telling you. Then when I went to bed, I laid there in air conditioning and watched YouTube on the TV that I streamed to from my phone.
Oh, so, compared to Hydrolab, that is a wonderful place to live. Oh.
Yeah, it was. I was very surprised, positively surprised, because I figured. Once again, I've read up on the thing. I've seen videos on it. I knew kind of what to expect. Yeah. But it was once again, aside from getting in and out of those rooms, which is at almost like a 45-degree angle. So you have to have a bar. You have to like almost slide through or climb through these holes. So that was the biggest part that I was like, all right, that's a detriment to people trying to come and go. Yeah. Because if you're not limber at all, or it is a different, you could have hurt yourself. Or it's just a pain to get in and out. And also getting out of the moon pool, it's a pretty high,
Mhm.
you have to pull yourself up out of the moon pool. So you have to have a little bit of body strength to get yourself out as well. So there's those two areas there that were a little bit of a difficulty, that were a detriment to everyday person coming in there. But most people going in there, they're either scuba divers, so their health is pretty decent, or they kind of know what to expect.
Yeah. So it's not built for people my age.
I mean, I don't know, if you're limber, you could probably still do it.
Oh, you look younger than me.
Yeah. Does that answer your question, Alison?
It does. Thank
Okay.
you, Brendon.
Yeah.
I wanted to say that, you know, you have these two tubes, and actually there are two more tubes in it of the same size as far as I know, but they are only some kind of variable ballast tanks. So they will be completely flooded when it's on the seafloor. But when you want to lift up the whole facility, you just pump air in it, and the whole thing rises to the surface. The whole set is completely covered in some kind of more or less hydrodynamic cover, and you can even tow it on the surface to the next location. And this is a very advanced idea. So under the habitat, you have some adjustable legs, right? If it goes down, whenever it goes down to the seafloor, you can hydraulically adjust the legs to the seafloor. So it's a very well thought thing. And then I was thinking, if you take this habitat to another place and use it there, then it's a real luxurious thing. I mean, like, you have two big tubes inside, you have one wet room, and yeah, I mean, it sounds now a little bit funny. You get in and you stay there and you have nothing to see and stuff, but actually it's a very well thought piece of technology there, this La Chalupa habitat.
Yeah, that seems pretty advanced compared to what we went through. You know, Hydrolab was built back in the mid 60s, and its missions were, I think, about 180, I think, missions were in there, but it didn't last long. And of course, NOAA decommissioned it in 1985, and it ended up at the headquarters for NOAA in Washington, D.C. I was in the Smithsonian Institute for a while, and it was embarrassing when I'd take my kids and grandkids to the Smithsonian Institute, the museum there, and they would see my name on the side of the habitat as one of the first 50 aquanauts, and it was pretty embarrassing for them. They said, "Oh my gosh, my father's in the museum." Oh. Martin, would it be of interest for me to do a screen share for a few minutes and
Absolutely.
give you a little bit of a background on Hydrolab? You know, back in the mid 60s when Hydrolab was being built, this is where I lived. Can you see my little cursor when I move it?
No, we're still seeing your main picture, and then we're seeing next slide and no notes.
Okay, well, it's not important. Those 2 points of land are where the University of California in Santa Barbara are located. And right off of the nearest point, you'll see a lot of light color on the water. That's oil dripping up from natural oil seeps. And there's a drilling rig in the foreground, a little white spot on your screen. And that spot is where I started diving, because at that time in my life, I was a nuclear physicist, and believe it or not, I was designing missile systems. It was a very bad job. I didn't like it. And to keep sane, I would dive every moment I had off of the points there on natural oil seeps. And little did I know that would be opening up a career. This is an example of a natural oil seep, and you can see the oil dripping up from the ocean bed. These would produce up over 100 barrels of oil every day in that region. And one day while we were diving on the natural oil seeps, this is what happened. In 1969, the Santa Barbara blowout occurred. And so my friend, who had a small aircraft, we flew out and took this picture. And from that point on, because I got involved in studying that that man-made seep, if you will, I got into a lot of controversial issues. The oil company had been lying about the amount of oil that was released, and my estimates were 10 times greater. Pretty soon I found myself back in Washington, D.C., testifying before the Senate, and the oil companies were very upset. It turned out after 2 to 3 years of testimony and studies that my numbers were correct. So my career was born. At that point, I was going back and thinking about the kind of technology they used for cleaning up oil spills. And here they are spreading straw on the oil and soaking it up. It was a pretty primitive way of cleaning up oil spills and not very effective. It's hard to believe this is what they were doing back then for cleaning up oil spills. The reason I show you this is because oil from that blowout was coming into the nearshore areas and sinking. This picture shows sediment coming down a river and flowing out into the ocean, and the oil is attaching to the sediment and sinking. And in our dives, we discovered enormous amounts of impact to the marine life, the benthic communities in that area. And it was like mayonnaise on the ocean floor. As you can see, these blobs. And this was a good 10, 20, 30 centimeters deep with this thick, gooey, oily, mayonnaise-like material. And so that's what led to Hydrolab. I was talking to people at NOAA, and they said, you know, your studies of the impact of oil on the ocean bottom and the benthic communities is something we need to know more about. So they funded our first visit to Hydrolab. And as you can see, our habitat is much smaller than the one you've been describing. It was about 8 feet in diameter and about 15, 18 feet long. And it had a couple of windows around the side and one large window. You see me outside the habitat with a double set of tanks. And I don't know what I was doing, taking some notes or something, but that large window was wonderful at night because we could sit inside and observe through a very intense bright light you see above that large window, which would attract a lot of the animals to the site. And so some of the experiments we did were with artificially placing oil on the ocean floor and simulating the sinking of oil to the ocean bottom. I have a whole program of things, of experiments that we did, and the habitat supply system. This boat was positioned at sea over the habitat. You can see it with an umbilical cord leading down, and it provided everything we needed in the habitat for survival. And so anyway, these are a few pictures, and I think I could stop there and just go on and tell you a few more things about. Okay, so the point is that back in the 60s and early 70s, most of the habitats, or at least my experience with the habitats staying down for a week at a time, were very primitive. And in fact, if we have time today, what I'd like to do is talk about a few categories of areas where I felt, even back then, over about 50 years ago, where the habitability of what we had to live with could have been improved drastically. And as I go back and I think of the things that Martin, you had raised as issues like noise and smell and everything right on down to how we handle our toilet needs. Martin, you'll remember a few of those funny stories that maybe I don't need to share with this whole group, but you know, we didn't have a toilet. And so we had to just strip down naked and swim outside the habitat. And we would try to find a coral knoll. We were in the Bahamas where we would have a little privacy because the two other crazy guys that I was living with, they loved to take pictures at critical times when you were out there doing something that wasn't very nice. And And I always love, this is a very short story, but one of the guys I dove with turned out to be best man at my wedding. And he was out doing his movement, and it was a pretty serious one, I guess. And I didn't know that, but apparently he came screaming up through the entrance to our habitat, swearing like a trooper. And we said, "What's the matter, Roger? What's going on?" And he said, "Look out the window, look out the window." And as we did, we saw a class of students, male and female. They had come down to witness the habitat and just see it. And they didn't tell us in advance. So he was out there stark naked, pooping, if you will. And they came down and caught him. And of course, as he turned and saw the group, this was pretty embarrassing. And I guess there was a funny stream of things in the wake as he rushed to get back to the habitat. And I think to this day, we have a good laugh.
The logical part now that actually it's very good nutrition for the biosphere.
Yeah, really. So anyway, I could see that habitats really do need to have an indoor restroom, if you will, and a place to store your wetsuits. I mean, at times, even though the waters were fairly warm, what we found was that we couldn't bring them inside. We had to put them in bags and with a string attached to the habitat, leave our wetsuits outside. And it was, more difficult to get into them at times. We found that night dives in particular were difficult, which leads to another topic of not just the noise and some of the odd smells that we had to deal with in such a limited space, but the issue of security and safety I found was troublesome. If we went out at night and there had been a loss of power at the supply boat above us, we would not have a way back to the habitat. And, it was not easy to have a string, if you would, or some kind of a cord that we could follow back to the habitat. So we often worried at night and made sure that we had a very bright, intense light that someone in the habitat could shine it out of a window if the power went out, a flashlight, if you would.
How deep was it anyway, the habitat?
It was 2.5 atmospheres, about 50 feet. Yeah, 50 feet.
50 meters, something like that.
Oh, you guys, you're just too scientific. I live in America where we still deal with inches, feet, miles and acres. What a crazy place to live as a scientist. So 50 feet was the water depth.
Oh, we had the same measurements like in the 15th century, I think.
But safety, was an issue, and we had that. Let me see if I can just do a very quick screen save here. This just so I can reference. Does this change the background?
No, I just changed your picture on the. Are you wanting to share the screen again?
No, I just in the background I was going to show this entry.
No, we still see you.
Yeah.
Your picture.
But do you see the habitat behind me?
No.
Oh.
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I can't do that then. That's okay. I won't show that. Let me get rid of it. That's curious. Okay, here we are. I think I'm back.
Now we can see it. Now we can see it.
Oh, you do. Okay. You see the entry to the habitat, which would be right here. And this was intended for a small submersible to come up and attach to it if we had some medical problem. And I found out after we got there that it wasn't functional. So there was no way that, let's say, a non-diving doctor, or if he had to stay with us for a while, would really not be able to come down and access us. And in the last day of my second trip, we went down 2 years in a row. I broke an eardrum and was under severe, severe pain. And it overlapped into the decompression period where we decompressed in the habitat. We would just close off the hatch cover inside. and decompress in there for, I believe it was 14 hours. And I remember lying there where every beat of my heart was an intense pain in my ear, but yet you couldn't take medication either for the pain or for anything else. So I'm hoping that habitats will have room for either a doctor to come down or to be in the program and be a part of it, because things occur. We had other things happen down there too, minor accidents.
Yeah, the point is that if you are 50 feet underwater, of course you cannot get up without any decompression.
Yes.
If it would have been 9 meters, like Jules Undersea Lodge, in that case, at least you could pop up to the surface straight away, but not at
Yeah.
50 feet.
Which is what happened to me the first time I was there. I got kidney stones while I was down there.
Oh no. Oh.
Yeah, I got down there and I realized I had kidney stones. I was down there maybe an hour or two, and they had to pull me out because I was in such severe pain.
Oh. Oh.
So.
Oh my gosh, that sounds hideous.
It was,
Yeah.
I was writhing in pain in the habitat, and I was like, I'm not getting out. I spent all this money. I came all this way, but I was just in agony. And so I finally had to call them and said they swung me out and took me to the hospital.
Wow. Wow.
So,
Brendon, is the habitat utilized for anything else beyond tourism? Are they utilizing it for any kind of research?
Yeah.
Okay.
They do have different groups that come down there and do different scientific research there.
Okay.
Well, La Chalupa was a very interesting habitat. They used it for several different missions in different locations. So just they made an underwater hotel like, 20 years ago. But before, they used it for different purposes.
And do you know, just out of curiosity, you might not know the answer to this question, but are any space-related companies, have they been utilizing the habitat, or has Jules, the lodge, been approached by them? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so there's a Thane Milhone who's come down. He's taken over as operations manager there about a year ago, and he's really. They were actually going to close it before he came down. It had been shuttered for a year because of COVID. And the plan was just to be done with it. But he came down, he was talking to Jan Koblik, who is, everybody in the diving industry knows who Jan Koblik is. And he was asking him if he'd help out. So Thane has come and kind of revitalized it, and he started doing some marketing stuff. But as right now, he's just dealing with dive schools and just some scientific stuff like that, but has not been doing anything as far as space goes.
Yeah, okay.
I'm curious about Hydrolab again, this place where you can attach some submersible. It was the only entrance to the habitat, or was there another entrance where you could enter, or did you have to get out through that?
No, we didn't. We had a separate hatch, and it was actually a small chamber with 2 hatch covers, so that we left that open all of the time. Pressure would build up within the habitat, and occasionally it would bubble out through it. So this was annoying, because about every 5 to 8 seconds, this thing would as the air would go out, and trying to sleep at night with that bubbling effect of the overpressure in the habitat was not good. But that was open all the time. And when we would decompress at the end, one diver at a time would climb into that chamber, close the bottom hatch. Then they would close the second hatch. And boy, if you were claustrophobic, you discovered it quickly then, because you're in there with one bottle and you're cramped up with your knees to your chest. With the 2 hatch covers closed, they then increase or affect the pressure inside, so that with time, it took about 2 minutes, you could drop the bottom hatch cover open, go out of the habitat, and then swim to the surface. And that was after you had decompressed.
That's what I said in the beginning. Actually, it was planned as as far as I know, that you could also operate it at 1 bar at surface pressure. So if you would make your dives outside the habitat and then come back to the habitat in the evening or whatever after several hours, you could reduce the pressure again to normal surface level, and you could in the end of the last day of the mission, you could get out of the habitat without any decompression or go up again. So they would,
Well, that is correct, and it took 14 hours to bring the habitat back to a natural pressure, surface pressure.
very similar to Aquarius. It takes 17, I think, in Aquarius.
Yeah.
Right.
The access tunnel that was designed for the submersible was that dry at all times?
No.
Okay.
No, that was flooded, but even the internal chamber cover for that was not visible. It was below the floorboards. They never even told us any way that could have been used. It was fictitious. I just don't understand. But we never needed it, fortunately. So there were a lot of, I think, very primitive things about that habitat. But the wonder was there. I mean, the glorious, just going out and diving, and I especially liked night dives. The animals were so easy to get close to. We could even pet fish that would go into a semi-sleep mode. And we had barracuda that were very fond of us, and they would swim up and hover right above our shoulders as we'd work on the bottom doing our oil experiments. And just watching fish, territorial fish, so protective of their niche on the ocean floor. And if we oiled it, they would literally clean it and take oil droplets and to a dump site that they created and put the oiled sediment in a site so their area was clean. I mean, just to watch and get close to, you start to think like an animal, like a fish. It was just, you had such love and respect for them. And it's hard to explain that. I think Sylvia Earle, when she was on your program, Martin, I remember at the end, she described that she had experienced that same thing. You become one with that environment after you're down there for a week. And we felt very guilty about putting oil on parts of their habitat.
So I think, I mean, like, I spent really many hours underwater, and the thing why I was going on with underwater habitats was something that I called like connectivity, maybe.
Yeah.
To feel like a part of the undersea world, right?
Oh.
It's not the right words, maybe, but
You're part of the habitat. You're part of the environment.
Yeah.
Exactly. You have the feeling that the whole ocean is one organism, and they are suddenly a part of it. I mean, the largest percentage of our body is a water anyway. So when you are in the water and you're floating there, and you are relaxed after a short while. I mean, like, if you're a little bit experienced and you spend your time there without thinking about or whatever you're doing, you really feel like connected to that environment there.
Yes, you sure do. It was wonderful. In fact, Brendon, I'm so glad you sent that email with the invite for this, because I went to your website, and I have to confess, last night my wife was hollering at me. She said, "You've got to go to bed." I was watching on your website all of these programs. It's a part of Catch Our Drift. Oh my gosh, the episodes on that, they're about an hour long.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched 3 or 4 of those till after midnight. It was just wonderful to capture the essence of the speakers that were invited in those webinars. It's Alison, if you haven't had a chance yet to look at those.
I have not, but I will. I surely will today.
Oh,
we have a resource page on our website, and we got a bunch of different links to different podcasts and videos and stuff like that too.
Yeah, and it just brought out all of those experiences from when we've lived underwater for extended periods. The people that were interviewed bring such excitement to this whole concept of living underwater. And I'm going to start contributing to your program, because it's a wonderful cause. I just think everything you're doing and all these plans for habitats, they're very exciting.
The latest thing we did was to to collect different sources of proposals for better habitability in underwater, in any kind of artificial habitat. And we were able to define like 140 different proposals. And among them was exactly what you said, like with a tidal change, this movement in the hedge, maybe that you have to pressurize the eardrums several times in a minute or in 2 minutes. The same then different sounds or the high humidity. And if you have high humidity and you have some noise inside, you even cannot put earplugs to your ears because your ear channels are wet and it starts to get infected after a short while. So it should be a complete set of habitability factors there. Like you need a low humidity inside. You need a low sound noise level inside, and so on and so on. And in the end, from 140 proposals, we were able to implement 136 of them to a design. And these proposals, they came from astronauts, from the Mir station, from the ISS, they came from aquanauts, they came from space analog mission participants, and they all put their proposals together in different books and different sources. And you know, we made some kind of an Excel list, and we thought, how can we fix them into a new habitat? And if we are able to implement them all into the final habitat, it will be a very comfortable thing, you know. So everything that you describe as very uncomfortable in there, like the sound in the night, or let's say humidity, if you can all fix that in a new kind of habitat, it will be a very comfortable place.
And Martin, did they ever talk about the need for space to have exercise equipment?
Yes, absolutely.
Good.
So essentially space analogs, right? Yeah, that would be one of the multifunctional uses for the habitat in addition to tourism. It could be research, science, technology, or Martin, we were even chatting about pharmaceutical companies. There being a demand there for research, aerospace companies as well, doing research.
Subject I would like to open in a short while. So I tried to find somebody who's experienced from in Aquarius, but I was unable to find somebody because all of them they have their missions there, and some of them they don't want to say anything bad about it. So to get some real honest idea about it was a little bit difficult. So I didn't want to urge anyone anyway. But in the end, I found an interesting book written by James Nestor. His name is Deep. I really recommend it. And this book is about this connection between the ocean and yourself, that you feel very much connected to the ocean environment. And this guy spent in 2011 30 minutes in Aquarius, but he had some very interesting statements there, so I took some print out. For example, he said he came in and there were some aquanauts inside. He said the aquanauts all laugh, then fall silent. They laugh again, then go silent again. I can't help but feel that everyone down here is a little off, not in the cabin fever kind of way that I expected. They are far too jolly for that. They seem basically drunk. I learned that having your body pressurized to 36 psi for extended lengths of time can produce a mild delirium. So this was interesting. He said that nothing is ever dry down there. So they have, I found out later, humidity between 70 and 100%, which is unbearable. I mean, this does work. So the main problem there is seriously with the ear channels. Infections there, and they are all the time. I mean, to say this, I mean, it's a good virtue to criticize, and it's a good virtue to know how to be criticized. This is criticism. Of course, Aquarius is the most successful and most advanced habitat all over the place. But there are some things, he said, for example, he described Aquarius as a dank, cramped, dangerous place. Moldy towels, rusting metal, and suffocating humidity are the main facts of life here. And what Ellen just said, I noticed that we haven't seen a bathroom and asked Brett if we passed it. We usually just go out the back here, there, he said. So toilets are notoriously difficult to manage in underwater habitats, mostly due to the constant shifts in air pressure, which can create vacuums inside the plumbing lines. In early underwater habitats, toilets would explode and splatter waste throughout the compartment. Aquarius commode is an improvement, but it's so small and offers so little privacy that aquanauts prefer to do their business in the water out back. So nothing changed since Hydrolab, it seems.
Well, how about these new dry toilets? It was in your seasteading, I think, Brendon.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good approach.
It's an approach. I'm not, I think that's going to be, once again, it's I think a cultural thing. I think in certain parts of the world, the dry toilet's coming more, but in the Western world, not so many people are used to shoveling whatever it is, wood chips or whatever into the toilet before and after they go type of thing too. So I think there's a little bit of a learning and a cultural curve, but I agree for, in some situations, it may be a good one. Now, I know, like I say, at Jules, since they do have a toilet underwater, they've got a maciator, I guess it is, where it grinds it all up into a holding tank. And then I think once a day they have a hose and they pump it up to the surface.
Oh.
So is how they do it. So
well,
it works.
But that whole issue from a comfort standpoint is
absolutely
really important.
Yeah.
I can remember there were times when, even when I was younger, you'd wake up in the middle of the night and you just got to go. And the thought of going outside alone to find a place where you can go to the bathroom and then come back in, it was very uncomfortable and a little frightening at times, and probably not very safe.
Right. When maybe it looks like I like to talk about toilets or something, but actually it's such an important thing in a habitat. Like there was,
that's so right. And another one is food. We couldn't cook down there. The only thing we could do is heat water. And in fact, I remember the first day, within the first hour I was down there, I made a cup of tea. And boy, did I regret that, because the water boils at such a higher temperature at pressure. And the instant it hit my lip, I could hear my lip just burn. And I had a big blister on my lip for, days. And trying to put a mouthpiece in with a blister on your lip was not fun. Just learning about cooking and food preparation, thank goodness they had a nice little pot they could bring down, our support divers, every day, and they would try to bring down a ham sandwich or something, or better yet, a warm meal that we could eat. And but being able to cook, are the modern habitats providing more in the way of cooking and refrigeration?
Like I said, all I know is Jules, there's not too many modern habitats, period, but Jules with the retrofit, once again, I think the focus is what is your focus? Because if you're at 1 atmosphere, it changes a lot of stuff because you don't have to be compressed and you don't have to have all those issues. So as long as if your focus is on comfort and the everyday person coming as a tourist, you need to keep it at that 1 atmosphere. Otherwise, that changes everything, because then yes, you can cook, you can do everything from a standard, because there's a microwave, there was refrigerators, a bunch of other stuff that you could do. There wasn't a stove, obviously, because heat's still an issue, and the much amount of electricity and gases it takes to run one of those. So from my standpoint, I'm a big fan of trying to keep everything at 1 atmosphere as much as possible. I think it causes problems, but I think like what you showed yourself, Hydrolab had the very sort of a multi lockout chamber almost, where you for compression purposes. So you start implementing those into a bigger form factor, you can go deeper and still stay at 1 atmosphere internally. And I think that's the key, really, for not saying there's nothing need for saturation diving for the scientific aspects, but for the tourist industry or for the everyday person wanting to live, I think the 1 atmosphere needs to be a mandatory or a heavily looked at approach.
Question, Brendon, so have you actually started building any habitats, or I mean, clients that you're building these for, or?
Yeah, we're still at the point of, we're wanting to build our prototype, but it's a financial thing at this point in time.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah, we've got a location that's okayed us for putting one in the water once we get one built, but we're looking at just the prototype right now, which is a really stripped down version, just really testing out the fact that we know what we're doing type of thing.
Right, right. Was it hard to get the permit to put one of these in the water?
So the place that we're looking at is a privately owned quarry. So it's not that big of a deal because the owner has all the stuff taken care of. So yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
What I would like to ask to Ellen is, if do you remember anything like the smell inside the Hydrolab, or, I mean, humidity? I think you said already that it was quite high or something, but anything that was disturbing you most? I mean, like you said already, sound in the night was very much. I was wondering, for example, that there should be every time any humidity on the walls of the inside the habitat, because outside the temperature is different than inside. Then you are breathing, you are exhaling, and do you remember anything like that?
To me, I think one of the most troublesome things was the effect that humidity had on my skin. I was breaking out quite a bit. It looked like I had almost terminal acne. I thought I was going to die of pimples, and just it was a horrible experience. And we would wash down. We had a special soap we could use, and we would stand in the chamber with our feet on the bottom hatch. It was open, but we could stand on the edges, and one person would, with a shower of fresh water, wash you down and scrub with soap to try to reduce that problem. But everybody came down with this kind of like an acne pimple type of a reaction to the humidity. So I love the idea of coming up with something where we can maybe have a 1 atmosphere and a drier atmosphere, and be able to live in a more comfortable condition for that part of the day you're not outside. But, you know, I mean, that's just maybe a part of, for those who are going to stay down for extended periods, maybe that's just a price you pay. I don't know if you can solve that easily with the 1.
And what was the longest you were down for?
1 week. I went down twice, a year apart, for 1 week each time. And the conditions were the same, but it was such a small chamber. And the second year we had 4 people instead of 3. And so one person had to sleep on the floor. And I mean, we only had bunks for 3. And it was very uncomfortable. We really had to improvise in a lot of ways. We would rotate, you know, who was going to sleep on the floor each night. Creature comfort's extremely important.
Very interesting though, because, you know, Hydrolab, especially with this docking thing there, I really thought it was, I mean, like tested and stuff, how to dock some submersible, but it was the first time they approached something like that anyway with the docking device. So it really caught my attention. Yeah.
But, you know, it was so worthwhile. All of us, when we came up, what we felt that we had contributed to science was so valuable. I mean, the whole oil spill business that I worked then over 50 years dealing with other issues about keeping our oceans protected from oil spills, we learned so much down there, not only respect for the marine life, but things about their sensitivity, like when chemical dispersants came about as a very popular move in oil spill control. I could speak from a point of knowledge and direct experience. No, don't think that you get the oil off the surface using dispersants, that you're doing a good thing. You're putting it down in the water column, and you're going to have an impact on the marine life at a lower level. And so I think I brought appropriate balance of perspective on the use of chemical dispersants through my years in oil spill control and other issues. It just, I don't know, people need to spend more time underwater to understand this planet should be called planet oceans, I guess, instead of Earth. It's building the respect for our oceans is something more and more people need to experience. And if we can solve some of the habitability issues that I know Alison spends a lot of time thinking about, and marketability, how can we market this concept so that you're not trying to do something else to put food on your own table, Brendon, in the meantime? In fact, I wonder if that's not too personal to ask. What do you do other than hope and pray that we'll be able to fund these things?
Yeah, I said that's why I work a couple of different part-time jobs that fund, I live off of what I can. The rest goes into the Atlanta Sea Colony account, type of thing. So it's every little bit I got to pay my own bills, and the rest goes into that. So
yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Where in the market research that I was doing, working in tandem with Martin earlier, well, was it late last year, earlier this year, is that there are opportunities. I see tremendous opportunity where I think there's going to be exponential opportunities is in tandem with the growing space industry and the need to train more people to go to space, and these underwater habitats will be needed in the future, not only for the training, but also for the research as well. But what we tend to see, I think, in the space industry is it takes a while. It's a process, and it's not going to happen overnight. And what's exciting, however, is you're seeing more and more companies launching space training centers, even Sierra Space Corp. They're massive. They're building the Dream Chaser. They just announced recently they have launched a whole brand new arm to generate revenue, which is a astronaut training center. And they're going to need it. They're going to need these types of resources in terms of underwater habitats to be training. Yes, they can do the traditional pool training and whatnot, but as the industry grows and as there is a need for more and more trained individuals, I think that's where there's going to be a lot of opportunities with these habitats that are sitting on the ocean floor.
I think first we should understand why we are doing this anyway. I mean, why do we want to build an underwater habitat? Why? I mean, if you ask me this question, I would say because I want, as like Sylvia said, I want to have this human presence on the seafloor, because this is some step we have to take. If I do it, or Brendon does it, or somebody does it in 50 years, I actually don't care too much. But I think it's a step that's going to be taken one day. And then there are different, I mean, of course, we need a revenue for it. This is, otherwise it doesn't work, the whole thing, because it's an expensive thing, first to build it and of course to operate it. So one of them is seriously the space industry. It was just 2 or 3 days ago that we had a very interesting conversation with one of these companies who are building an astronaut training center, exactly with the same background. There are so many private space companies now and startups, and there will be a very big increase of people who will go to space in the future. So they need some new education and training facilities. Of course, what is the best test facility for that? It's an underwater habitat. So yes, if we depend only on space trainings, maybe that wouldn't work, because if they say, oh, for 3 months we have nothing to do, then the whole thing is bankrupt maybe. So what definitely we have to do is some kind of a karma concept, right? That we have as many different sectors as possible. At the
Going back
moment,
to the multifunctional use model, where the habitat serves multiple uses. It could be tourism, it could be research, it could be space training. Yeah.
You had a very good proposal last year. You said, yeah, why don't you build this habitat? And in the end, if you have it built and approved, try to sell it.
Yeah, well, I think there's a few strategies that could be implemented in terms of, generating profitability. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what needs to happen in order for these habitats to be positioned and for this business model to have scalability. But from the standpoint of the growing space industry, there could be a massive opportunity just to basically go the direct sales model, where you're creating these habitats and selling them direct to, could be aerospace companies, it could be, the Blue Origins, the SpaceX, all those companies.
Right.
And they actually buy the units. It's almost like selling a car. You buy the car, you operate the car, and it's yours. And kind of the same concept with these habitats is selling them to the space industry, where they would be purchasing these units and they would end up operating them. So that takes off kind of the front end, operational costs for managing and operating these units, because I would imagine, there's a lot of investment going into operating these. Right. So potentially going the direct sales model, and then also, the anchor tenant model, very similar to what's happening in New Mexico with the new spaceport. So, the spaceport is utilized by Virgin Galactic, but they're outsourcing the space to several other entities in the space industry that are conducting, research, or they're prototype testing. So you could also have that model, which I reference as the anchor tenant model, similar to the International Space Station as well, where you have basically rotating, tenants coming in from key sectors or segments where there's a market need for these habitats, but you have your anchor tenant, for example, NASA. NASA, I envision they could be an anchor tenant, just based on all the research they're doing, and definitely a need for a habitat. So they could be the primary tenant and then renting out the space as needed to other entities. So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity. It's just a function of getting the funding, obviously, to build the prototype and to start testing these.
Where I think we could really have a powerful entry to funding is with the recognized global interest now in climate change, and how that's going to flood many of these countries that have coastal communities, including the US. We have many cities that will be flooded if everything is correct in terms of the sea rise. And if this is the case, and we see companies thinking seriously about building floating communities, if we can start to support those floating communities with something that's subsea, such as these thermal chutes from which we can get very hot water, and with thermocouple science, produce electricity to be a power source for these offshore cities, and not rely on what's going on shore to support it. Through the whole climate change thing, I wonder if we can't get more publicity and support.
And it's interesting you bring that up, because I've actually got a call maybe later this week with a company that does thermal energy for that whole thing. They saw us on one of our lives that we do, and he hit me up, and I've been talking to him. Plus, we're partnered with the Seasteading Institute. So we talk to them all the time about floating cities. So we've definitely partnered with them as far as the taking care of the underwater. So exactly what we were talking about is one of the factors that we've been looking at personally. And another a revenue stream that we haven't talked about too is data centers. underwater data centers. Microsoft's proven it can be done. China's building a giant one right now. South Korea's got plans for one. And that's a multi-billion-dollar industry right there that takes.
It came to my mind when you were talking about data centers some weeks ago in one of your podcasts that I mean, you know, we have this idea of a modular system that we can add different modules to each other. If we have a habitat for tourism, for space training, and dock to it some kind of data center, all this, why they put data centers underwater? Because cooling is very cheap in underwater, right? But if you can take the same temperature again back to the habitat and use it for the habitat, to heat up the habitat, or to use that energy, then, you know, it's also some kind of, sorry for interrupting, but I just
absolutely. And yeah, that's one of our designs is very agnostic approach, where you can put anything you want into it, whether it be a data center, whether it be greenhouse, whether it be a resort, whatever. So that's why we designed ours the way it was, so that we could put whatever we want into it. Very similar to what, you know, Martin's doing too, as far as it is what it is. You can do whatever you want with it, whether it be space analog.
So essentially like a shell. And then depending on who the client is, they would upgrade it just like a vehicle based on their needs.
And after your proposal, Alison, about this selling the whole habitat, the first day I confess, I said, yeah, come on, who should buy a habitat and stuff. But the more I was thinking about it, in the end, I said to myself, okay, seriously, and I was talking with Michael Schutzer again about that. If we make one plan of a habitat, which has all the habitability factors settled in it, if we have there are 3 phases of planning it, the first, the second, third, about until it's complete approved in the end. If we take the pressure improvement, and if we have in the end the final design for it, that would be the first product, I think, without even to have the habitat itself. To have this product, to have the complete plan, and whoever would like to build any habitat, you know, because the serial product, then it would be much cheaper to adopt our design than thinking about it over again. So if you want to have a hotel, you make a hotel inside, you make some guest room. If you want to have a scientific laboratory, you make a laboratory, but it's all the same. It's like a, how can I say?
It's like a kit.
It's like a
kit. Like you are selling the design or the kit design for various uses based on what they're utilizing the habitat for. It's kind of like airplanes. You know, I just finished a consulting project for flying cars, and it all started with defining this customer segment of entities, customers that build these small flying planes utilizing a kit. And they have grown in popularity. They've been around for a very long time, but it's kind of the same concept where, you know, you are selling a design based on a particular need, and in the flying for these individual private flyers, they're doing it for personal recreational use. But I understand it's like you're selling a very specific like kit / design.
It's like a Volkswagen Transporter, you know. You can use it for camping, you can use it as a house painter, or you can use it for anything. You can make a whatever, some kind of an fast food restaurant in it, and this is what I mean, you know. If we have that design only, and that shouldn't be too expensive, I think. But in the end, if somebody wants to, and then we are thinking, okay, for what kind of depth we can think about that. So we said, okay, 9 meters, you don't need any decompression. But, you know, is that interesting for most of the people? Not really. 20 meters, 30. And in the end, we said, where's the limit anyway? I mean, what kind of purposes could any mission conductor have for an underwater habitat? So we came up to 50 meters, which is 150 feet. If we are able to let it approved to with a depth range of 50 meters, and even can use it for 1 bar application with so we can reduce the pressure inside. Then we would cover all kind of possible applications, everything from space applications, space trainings. We don't have to put it to 50 meters, but we can use it at 9 meters, we can use it at 15 or 20, but we can use it up to 50 meters. 50 meters would be 25% of the whole continental shelf. And it's one area where you still have enough light to, to be attractive there. Under that, it's not really interesting anymore, I think. Yeah, this is the whole idea. So there is interest from space training. We are definitely sure about it, and these talks are going on. Maybe you remember Peter Weiss, who was in the conference as well. He was joining this meeting as well some days ago, and it seems like there's some real excitement about it. That
definitely. Yeah.
Get the feeling of a real space module to train the people. It shouldn't look like undersea habitat, but no problem. Again, we are talking about the outer shell. Inside, you can make it as a complete space station mock-up if you want.
Yeah, I can't help but think that, we have identified, or especially you guys have identified over the last several years, so many of the important ways that these habitats can be used. I keep coming back to the marketing, and we need more people like, let's see, in one of your Catch Our Drift sessions, you interviewed Kathy Sullivan, who is an aquanaut astronaut, and, people like Edgar Mitchell, who had that epiphany coming back from the moon and established the Institute of Noetic Sciences. I mean, people who have captured the attention of the world because of what they've done. Let's see, who was the other astronaut that was an aquanaut? He was he lived underwater. Oh my goodness, I can't believe his name just escaped me. Anyway, he signed my dive card. I was at a conference many decades ago, and I was so moved by his experience as an astronaut and the fact that he also became an aquanaut. What was it?
Would be Scott Carpenter, right?
Yeah, Scott Carpenter. Thank you. Yeah, maybe my dive card will someday be very valuable. He signed it. and anyway, these people, and like Kathy Sullivan, if we could just get them doing more to sell this concept of the importance of habitability, living on the oceans, on, in, and under, down deep on the ocean floor, if they could capture the attention. I don't know, politicians lately, I'm not too happy about politicians in the US, but if you could find some good, honest politicians who could take the time to impress upon the nation the importance of all of this, maybe we could start to get the support we need.
Or, the other option, is going the philanthropic route. I mean, if you look at, I think I sent this to you, Martin. I think Alan, I mentioned it to you at some point to take a peek at it, but it's called Ocean X. And what Ocean X is doing is incredible. The research that they're doing and what they're doing in the world of education, and it's just phenomenal what that entity is doing. And they're being completely funded by a philanthropic entity based out, I think, New York, and really big funding coming out of, they were former hedge fund guys.
And,
yeah, there you go. Yep. And, I think there's probably opportunities there as well to get private funding, in addition to, potentially looking at the policymakers. And but I know, Martin, you've tried that approach over in Europe with ESA, and you've been knocking on their door for a while.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's still going on. It's not, the door didn't close, so it's still going on.
It's a process.
I believe seriously that if we one time can convince somebody to build the first prototype, the whole thing goes on. If we manage it in the right way, if we have the right design, if it's attractive, if it looks good, if it's very good usable, if it has some real sense. It's difficult to reach this kind of people, Ray Dalio or something.
You need big, I don't know, big names. This Fabien Cousteau, just having the name Cousteau. And you had an interview, Brendon, or the group with the Catch Our Drift. I dove with one of the members of the Cousteau family way back 50 years ago, and I thought, oh, great, Cousteau. It just got everybody's attention, and if only we had people like that could speak for this.
Speaking of Cousteau, how was that project going? So, what was it? The grandson? Sorry. Is been working on this concept for launching an underwater habitat for quite a few years now. I'm just curious, does anyone have any feedback or updates on how his funding's going along, if he's getting any funding?
He just did a podcast on it. He said he's in stage 1 of funding. He's got some funding. He's shooting for 2025. They'll be done by 2025 and be open in 2026. So they're in the stage 1 of engineering right now with their seed funding. So they're working on the second phase of funding while they're working on the engineering right now is where they're at. Now is as of last month.
Your webinar, Brendon, your webinar where I think it was I wrote it down, number 8 on space. That's where you interviewed Fabien, and I think
so that wasn't, so the Catch Our Drift is not us. That's another.
Don't you support that though? And
it's on our resource page. It's one of the ones that we like, but we're not affiliated with them.
Okay.
So,
I thought you had maybe a financial connection.
No.
Oh,
we just we just promote them, but we're not affiliated.
Fabien Cousteau's project is called Proteus.
Yes.
Yeah, I hope it works, but I have serious doubts about that, because that's I don't know. I have doubts that it's going to happen, but I hope it does. But as I said before, we try to reduce the design to the smallest, but fully functional module that we can bring underwater.
Yeah.
But if I start with a $200 million design from the beginning, it's very unlikely that it's going to work. And I don't see this modularity approach at Fabien's. I think I hope I'm wrong, and I hope it works, but I'm not sure about that.
Another thought in terms of funding is, why not go direct to the sources of the high net worth that are going to space right now? Those people are, they have the wealth and they've had the experience of going to space. So there's that connection there in terms of understanding maybe the space industry more so than other individuals. And maybe there's an understanding of the actual need to have these habitats as, the space industry grows over the next few years. I mean, that's just a thought. I'm brainstorming, but there's a lot of high net worth individuals out there, and they're going to space right now. I mean,
you mentioned Sierra Space before. They are planning to have this astronaut training facility.
Yeah, they just announced.
But seriously, I have difficulties how to reach them. So and get about 20 million emails every day. I can try to connect to some of their managers they
I
also
know it's hard. It's like getting through iron gates. Yeah.
very fundamental problem, you know. So
And aren't they from Turkey, the owners?
sorry.
Aren't the owners of Sierra, like the CEO, I think it's a CEO, husband and wife team, aren't they from Turkey?
The Turkish couple, as far
Yeah.
as I know, and, they worked before at Sierra Space before they bought the complete company. So yeah, but still, you know, it's very fundamental problem. You just I'm very sorry to say that, but the world works like this. You know this guy, I know him, and do you know him? And let's talk to him.
Right.
And how the whole thing works. It's really embarrassing, and but the whole thing works like this. So
Yeah, and in addition, you know, these individuals want, let's be honest, you know, when they're investing in a project and, you know, a scope of this project, you know, they want to see a return. They want to see profitability. So there needs to be a really, you know, well laid out, cemented argument and business plan that shows scalability and profitability.
Yeah.
or I was talking with Ellen about it before, sponsoring that you have a very fascinating project underwater, something that looks different. I mean, every time I talk about attractivity, but that's some kind of the whole thing. It's part of the whole thing. To have sponsoring, to use the outer shell for commercial advertisement and this kind of things. Then it would work like this. You get an advertisement partner, work together with them for a certain period of time, and after that you go on with the next partner or with a complete different sector. Then that would be a good thing, you know.
It would be if we could somehow convince them that there's profitability in that. And as you know, Martin, I went to a couple of the oil companies that were some of the major clients that I had for 5 decades. And they had supported a lot of my research and projects, and I got a total zero interest when I proposed to them. I sent them a lot of literature on it, and I thought I had their attention. And then they came back and they said, well, you know, our budgets have been cut and we can't fund this, we can't fund that. And so they just basically said no. Really disappointing. Oil companies with all their resources.
You know, I'm doing it since 2006, and in these days I'm disappointed for half an hour, and then I go back to the next chapter. You know, so yeah, it's disappointing. It happened a million times to me, but it will not happen forever. You know, so
we just keep trying.
Okay, I have a question because you guys have been bouncing around floating sea communities, and that's not one area that I have any knowledge on. Is anything actually happening in that particular area right now with floating communities being built? Question one.
There's a large company called Ocean Builders based out of Panama that is actually making some beautiful floating houses. And they're one of the leaders in that. There's a couple other companies that are testing some stuff out, but I'd say Ocean Builders is probably the number one out there that's actually showing something for what they're doing. And they've got an impressive website, and they got daily videos updating on what they're doing and the technologies they're using. So they're one to look at, and they've got an amazing, they're just amazing. But anybody under the Seasteading Institute, they're an organization, a non-for-profit, and they've got a bunch of different projects under there that are moving forward. Obviously, we're under there as well, even though we're not a floating process. They've taken us under their wing. So
and it's called what? Seasteading. Oh, Seasteading. Okay.
Yeah. And the Seasteading, I think it's seasteading.org.
Yeah,
is their
Steading,
website.
STEADING.
Okay.
Steading.
Gotcha.
And so there's several different, Arctide is another one that's out there doing a bunch of stuff. Yeah, there's several different organizations out there working on the floating aspect. And they have a pretty large community.
There's one interesting project in the Netherlands as well. They are planning to make a floating city on the ocean there, because
Yeah.
you know they have some trouble there with rising sea levels, and they are getting serious about that. They have many of floating houses already, and now they start to think about the complete area that they will build with dikes around and floating houses.
Mhm.
That's fascinating. I had no idea this was something that's really blooming right now. Because where I'm coming at it, I'm just thinking about, okay, where is there a lot of money being like investor monies being channeled into new technology beyond, let's say, electric cars? Are one area where there's a ton of funding just being spent, corporate-backed funding and private funding is EV tolls right now. So flying cars, there's just ungodly amounts of money going into EV tolls. And that's the future, and it's happening. I mean, I just heard on the radio in Los Angeles, there's 5 lead companies that are gaining their permits, working to get their permits and approval to basically start testing of flying cars out of Los Angeles. And it's also happening out of Miami as well. So, you know, I'm just kind of trying to think creatively, you know, from the standpoint of eventually EV tolls will service those floating communities. I mean, that's what they're designed to go short hop, and then also designed to go longer longer distances once the technology is there. But in the meantime, they're designed to do, you know, short hop 20, 30 mile transits. And those will eventually service as, you know, transportation to and from these floating communities. So where I'm going with this, I'm just, again, brainstorming where there could be potential opportunities for funding.
And Ocean Builders actually has been talking to an EV toll company to do that. They've already partnered with them to an extent for that whole purpose. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there you go. Perfect example. Yeah. Or even the platforms, the old, you know, the oil rigs that are no longer being utilized as oil rigs, those potentially can be utilized as EV toll vertiports, which is perfect because the infrastructure is already in place and you're just converting it to a vertiport for landings. And then, you know, perhaps eventually one day floating communities around those oil rigs, and then moving down, having the undersea habitats. Alan, I know this is one kind of idea or concept that you looked at a few years ago when you were consulting on a project. And am I remembering this correctly? You were looking at feasibility of platforms for...
Yes, I got involved with the National Park Service, looking at them as underwater habitats that fish would like to feed on and so on. And the oil companies were very interested in that for a while because it's expensive for them to eliminate or remove those old oil rigs, very expensive. And they have to sever the wells and make sure that those are not going to leak and so on. So it sort of died. People were misusing the concept and it never took off. But I think you have a good point there, you know, using some of these drilling rigs to support the transport out to these communities. Yeah, that might be a good one. In the Gulf of Mexico, maybe that would be a good place to start.
Yeah, well, state of California, I recently heard, is looking for business proposals for entities to utilize these platforms off the coast of California. So they're innovating. They're looking for entities that might be able to bring in revenue through interesting business concepts. So I think there's opportunity in that particular arena.
Do you know anyone in that area that
I
has
don't
good
have any
contacts?
personal contacts.
Yeah.
I don't, unfortunately. But, just thinking again, brainstorming, even from the standpoint of, if it's habitats underneath, if it's floating communities, yeah, I see opportunities for aquaculture as well. I mean, look what's happening to, our supplies and our food resources with all this drought happening in the state of California. Or, we're going to need to think of other means to supply food, and aquaculture is another potential, opportunity revenue stream, which will be much needed, I think, in the future as, we deal or cope with climate change.
Yeah.
There's another topic that came to my mind some weeks ago, which is today I saw it in the news in Kuwait, around Kuwait, they had an air temperature of 52.7 degrees Celsius. This is far much more than anybody.
Inhabitable.
Absolutely. It's 52.7 degrees. It's half a way to boiling water. This is unbelievable. So I mean, like similar to this Poseidon Resorts before. Poseidon Resorts was an underwater hotel with some kind of escalator at the site. So you stayed at one bar, you went down to the habitat and stayed in your little hotel rooms there. And to have a one bar, some kind of a structure that you can even, get better and better. And after a while, maybe that would be an interesting thing for people to retreat underwater, in this kind of countries. 52.7 degrees, you cannot live there anymore. And, so maybe it sounds a little bit like science fiction, but just to keep in mind, they're countries, they cannot go anywhere else, these people. They have the air condition, and if the air condition fails or electricity is cut, then good day. So this is something that again and again comes to my mind. Why not? I mean, if we develop this kind of an underwater living environment, maybe that's interesting for this kind of countries there, the Gulf states, or billions of people, of course, but at least for weekends, or again, yeah, we come back to tourism in the end, or people like me, maybe people would like to live there seriously with a lift, to go down or not. For tourism, I had an interesting talk with Brendon before. Could tourism really be a potential application for underwater habitats or not? So Ian Koblik said in the last meeting, in the conference, that we tried it since 20 years and it's not very successful. And I mean, of course, it's successful, but not much as you would think. Then it came to my mind, yeah, right, Jules Undersea Lodge is a very good facility, but still it is in a lagoon. You have a visibility of 2 or 3 meters, so you should be really interested in the habitat and not in the surrounding there, I guess. If you think about Aquarius, right, at Florida, the same thing. You have 6 persons there on about, I think it's 39 square meters, which is very small, and sits 20 years at the same place. And if you take all of these things into account, could there be a potential for tourism? And I think yes, there could be, if you have the right surrounding, if you have the right setting, if you have maybe a changing location every year, every 2 years. I think there could be a real potential, not for people only who would like to see the habitat, but who would like to spend some days there and in the surrounding. So Alan said before about the beauty of the surrounding there. Yeah, people who would like to get that feeling, a little bit equivalent to this overview effect, right? that Frank White called it an underview effect. Like many people, many aquanauts said, okay, this is a complete different feeling to be underwater. There should be a potential for tourism there, and I really insist on that. What do you think about that?
I think it's a great idea. I think some of the happiest times I spent diving were just swimming through the kelp forests right off of Santa Barbara and Goleta in that area. Anyone who's done that, it's just phenomenal. It's like swimming through a forest.
Yeah.
It's so peaceful and so rich. All of the fish and marine life have so much to feed on in that area. People I would think would be anxious to be able to go down and spend a day in a habitat and swim out if they have the scuba capability to go out and extend from the habitat and swim through these kelp forests. And it's fairly close to shore. It's not like it's out in deep water, 80 to 100 feet or less. And but yet the habitat could be at a shallower depth as well. So how do you find people that can sell these concepts, that have contacts?
Well, I just, it's funny that you mentioned that because I've just been brainstorming again, but so I was helping Loretta White Strides, and Alan, I think you know Loretta.
Yes.
So Loretta is the wife of the former CEO of Virgin Galactic, and he still serves on the board at Virgin Galactic, and he's working on some amazing projects. But I'm connected with her we're pretty connected. Let's just say that because I've been working on a project for her. And she is very connected with, do you guys know who Cyan Proctor is?
Yes.
Okay, so Cyan Proctor was the first Black female astronaut. Actually, no, not first female Black astronaut. She did get a first, and I can't remember what that is, but she flew with Jared Isaacman and the two others on a SpaceX flight last summer. And I forgot the name, Inspiration 4. And Cyan and Loretta are really, really close. And obviously Cyan knows Jared Isaacman, and he's a billionaire, and he's very active with SpaceX. I mean, he's even working on mission number 2 and 3 with SpaceX, and ultimately living on the space station at some point. But anyways, where I'm going with this is there could be opportunities to kind of knock through those doors with this concept. And Cyan Proctor went to astronaut training school, which I just found out a week and a half ago. I just got accepted into astronaut training school, into a program, into the same school that she went to.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a citizen astronaut training program, and
nice.
I just got in last week, and so there might be opportunities to kind of finagle through those channels as well.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, to get the concept out there and the model.
Just to get into touch with these people and to collect them all. This is. In the end, there found no one who said, no, this is complete nonsense what you're doing. All of them, they were interested, till a certain level.
Yeah.
If we only have this ignition again, then
right.
I'm sure that all of them, they will join. I mean, there's still, again, like space applications. Everybody I was talking with, they said, yeah, that could be possible. We would definitely go on. Do you have a habitat already? No, we don't have. Yeah, okay, then nothing. So it's always the same, So
yeah, it's finding those Pied Pipers.
To reach out to them would be definitely a big benefit. I mean, I don't know what kind of maybe they have a complete different idea what kind of benefit they want to have from it, but I think it deserves to talk, really.
Yeah.
This astronaut you were just talking about, she's also the founder of the
Oh, Cyan Proctor of the Space Analog Conference. Yeah.
community or something.
Yeah.
There's also very much going on there. I mean, space analogs, and I was very surprised to hear that in many space analog initiatives, people are paying for joining these.
Yeah, yeah, that's a whole. Yeah, people are paying for a tour standpoint to be in a space analog.
So we had the idea about this Euromed group. Maybe you heard about it. This is all countries all around the Mediterranean. They are like I think 32 countries or something. They all have their own entertainment, their own space programs, their own analog mission programs, their own anything. Everything that you have, they have the same. You know. So if we would make it close to these Euromed countries, somewhere in the Mediterranean, I think there's an unbelievable potential then, you know, because everybody wants to have, let's say, a North African country, maybe they don't have the opportunity to bring their own people to the ISS, maybe. But if we would have an astronaut training underwater there, with their own flag on their arm, with a complete training there, I think that would be very attractive to them.
And just thinking out loud again, so in wrapping up this flying car project, so did the sales and marketing plan for that entity, and they're seeking Series A funding from an investor who I'm connected with down in Florida. And this investor, his company, invested in Space Perspective, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with. Space Perspective just got their second round funding. I think they got 40 million in funding for that project. So perhaps, you know, just with that space connection again, and looking at those and finding out, you know, what investors are funding the space perspectives of the world and other space related entities, and doing the research there, because they obviously have an interest and they see opportunity for, you know, the space industry and space tourism. So that would be another approach to be looking at, is find out who's investing in these space companies, private investors, and, you know, approach those entities. And I'm already connected with one of them. Alan, you probably know him. He's on Overview, and his name escapes me, but he's on Overview Roundtable almost weekly. I think he's on it because he's always looking for ideas.
Yes, I know who you mean. I can't think of his name either.
Yeah, and he's based, well, he used to be based here in LA, but now he's down in Florida because that's a hotbed for the space industry and also the flying car market.
Well, these are the right contacts, the right people. I think your connections will be valuable. You know, in my retirement, I don't know, I don't get around as much as I used to with the oil industry or other clients, but if any of you ever have a need for someone that's an aquanaut, been down, lived underwater.
Oh my gosh, what you bring to the table is just brilliant. You bring the experience to the table, Alan.
I could be of help with any of you if you ever get a meeting set up, if it's virtual or even in place. I do what I can to, you know, like visit schools, and the kids just love to hear about living under the water, and to get our youth thinking along these lines is of value. You know, when I lived in Alaska for 15 years and then continued for another 20 years working up there in Alaska a lot, part of my job was selling ideas for the oil companies to the Eskimo. We would go out 15 to 20 times a year, and we'd live in a village for a few days, and we would talk to the classes, the school kids from elementary to high school, and then in the evenings we would meet with the elders, and my job was to tell them about the oil companies and how yes, spills can happen, but if they do, here's the technology to deal with the spill, to minimize the impact on the environment, and to try to win their confidence that allowing offshore drilling would take place. And those things really worked. I mean, it takes years and years. Well, gee, at 84, I don't have a whole lot of years left to do this, but in the time that I do have left, if I can ever be of help in going out to communities and telling them about the excitement of the oceans and the value and what all of you are trying to do, I would love to do that.
Oh, that's brilliant. There's just so much opportunity.
Great.
I mean,
So many different ways.
thing is that I always love to meet people who are as fascinated as us on underwater habitats, and this is the main point. First of all, this is unbelievable energy coming out there. Nah?
Nursel, do I pronounce your name correctly? Do you have something that you wanted to add to or have a reaction to what you've heard?
Nursel is staring at me.
Sorry, I'm nursing a mild headache, so I'm trying to avoid a bit of screen, you know. No, it has been fascinating. I really loved your ideas and sharing, and Alan, what you told about the poop, that was pretty funny. Couldn't stop laughing. I mean, you couldn't hear me, thank God, but I thought that's hilarious. And yeah, Alison, I mean, your brainstorming is really great. I love it. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Also, we built some kind of an diving bell back in 2006 or something. And it's a very funny story. Maybe you want to hear that. We were working in the diving centers that time. And we said, okay, how can we make some kind of a little diving bell where 3 people can get in just with the upper body, you know, and they can talk inside and, you know, so how can we build it? So I was walking around and I saw a playground, you know, and, you know, they are this kind of red mushrooms with the white dots on it where the children can get in from plastic, these big things. Maybe you've seen them before. And then I said, we need something like this actually. So I had a look at the little plate on it where they produce it, and I went there and I said, I want to have one of these mushrooms there. They said, why do you want? What do you want to do with it? A playground? I said, no, I want to build a diving bell. And they said, yeah, you can have one. I said, yeah, but I need in yellow. But there are no yellow mushrooms, they said. Yeah, but I need in yellow. So they produced it in yellow for me. So then we went to a little, whatever, sport boat builder around there to make this chrome skeleton inside and some big weight under. We made some wheel of concrete, you know, to hang it under. And in the end, we had it underwater, and it was completely misdesigned in the first place. So we had to take it out and change it again. And in the end, it worked out, and we got in. And we said, okay, we made it for, you know, people can get in and they can talk underwater, right? But you couldn't talk because it was round and there was such a strange echo in it with all this tension that it was impossible to understand each other, you know. But one thing it proved, I mean, at least for me, that all the tourists who came down there for a very short period of time, I mean, people loved it, right? Nursel, I mean, like, they came in, they said, oh, that's a funny thing to have. And we had some pictures there, and it was really good. We did that together in a long time ago. It was funny.
Yeah, we did a lot of things together, like the underwater exhibition. Everyone got excited about that, and, you know, many things.
Yeah, just talk about this exhibition. There's also an interesting thing, huh? Art and culture.
Fantastic.
We had, I mean, I went to 2 different universities here in Turkey. And I said, yeah, come on, you have all these sculptures, students. What do you think if we take some of your sculptures and bring them underwater and make some underwater sculpture exhibition from it? And they found students who would like to join, 13 of them. Maybe it was a wrong number, that's why it wasn't 13. And we found a sponsor, somebody who brought all the marble. It was real marble they brought us. So they made these statues there, sculptures. We brought them underwater. And we calculated that in 1 year underwater, we had like 3,600 scuba diving tourists there. I mean, they didn't pay anything for it, but they had to dive through this park there. And it was exactly made like they can have a 45 minutes dive there. So that's why arts and culture also could be an interesting topic for undersea habitats, right?
Yeah, because everyone wanted a photo taken with those sculptures in the background.
Yeah. So any question from anyone to anyone else here still? Otherwise, I would say it's about 2 hours already.
Yeah, I have to head on out now, but that was phenomenal. That was a great session, and gosh, it's so great to meet you all, and of course, Martin, to see you again, and Alan, to see you again. That was really productive, and yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity for this concept. I mean, it's just finding the right people, getting the plan in place to pitch the plan, and going out there and knocking on doors.
We need some very wealthy friends.
Well, we have our friend Tomas, who's connected with a very wealthy individual that's funding his project that's related to climate change, actually, now that I think about it.
We should explore that. Tomas would be a great contact.
Should explore that, because he's a billionaire based in Beverly Hills, and he's funding that whole project.
And I wonder about places like the universities. University of Southern California with their facility at Catalina Island. That's where I took my first serious 5-week advanced diver training course out at the island. And there were very many very wealthy people that would come out there and love to dive because the waters were so clear. The visibility was wonderful. Yeah, and maybe some of these people that are associated with Catalina and the university, and maybe the diving program that they had going. I don't know if that's still active or not. That's something to look into.
For sure.
Yeah,
we should put the seed in the soil somewhere, and
I'll check into that, Martin. I'll follow up with some people that I know used to be involved with the USC, University of Southern California dive program, and see if there's anything still going on there. They had a wonderful facility there where they could take a large number of people, and house them and provide diver training at the isthmus, the narrow part of Catalina, how it breaks into 2 areas. There's the narrow portion connecting that, which is just perfect, a cove. That's where I went down in the Nekton Gamma submersible, and got a lot of experience with that, and with self-propelled little submersibles that you could hold on to and swim with through the kelp beds. And people would swarm out there just to, be associated with that. I don't know. I'm getting excited about it. Let me look into that.
Love it.
So we made all the preparation. So I think we are completely settled with undersea habitats, and there are many people who are waiting that as soon as there's one undersea facility, we would like to use it somehow, but we need the first ignition funding. This is the only point. So this is it, everybody. Really, I'm so happy that you joined. It was really interesting for me, especially with Alan. It was this Hydrolab idea was really good. And if you want, we repeat it one day and we just have a nice chat again. And this was very nice.
Yeah, that would be lovely.
Thank you for making this happen. It was wonderful. Brendon, wonderful to meet you and hear the programs you're involved with. And
thank you.
And I'd like to stay in touch with all of you. It's great.
Absolutely. I hope we repeat it soon, and I will inform you then about it.
All right.
Excellent. Okay. All right, guys. Good chat. Take care, everyone.
All the best to all of you.
All right.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.